To describe the actual issue that happened, it was as follows. So it was a anti-DDoS protection on the server on which the game was being played. And why it was triggering was because it was basically trying to limit bandwidth from one IP address, which was the NiP practice facility. Now, why this was so unusual is this protection has been on every server that FaceIT has ever used, right? And obviously, we've had teams across all flashpoints playing from boot camps. Even as far back as ECS, they told me that they had the same protection on the server. It had never once, to their knowledge, like triggered before. So there was, I'm not exactly sure what it was about the NiP connection, but it was for some reason just their connection, right? And so the reason why, to explain why you have to play on a FaceIT server, because fans and players are very quick, oh, why can't we just play on another server? So there is anti-cheat on the FaceIT server. So you can't just flip to a different server. You know, the teams were kind of like fighting about which server they wanted to be on, which location for ping reasons. Apparently the Swedish server was working better for NiP, but it was like 5 ping for them and 50 ping for Anonymous. So Anonymous didn't want to play on this server. So there were other extenuating circumstances as well. You know, there's anti-cheat on these servers, so you can't just flip to a random server that doesn't have anti-cheat. There's also and fans don't understand this, there are very, very important betting partners with every CSGO tournament that need a live GoTV feed in order to adjust odds. It's a crucial component of how the CSGO economy works. And so what happens is you have to have delays for other partners who are using the GoTV feed, and you have to keep the live feeds, you know, only going basically to the betting partners, because otherwise you get, I'm sure we'll talk about it, what happened in the CIS RMR where people have access to the live feeds. Super dangerous for competitive integrity. We've had to do all kinds of things this year. We've had to do Twitch stream delays of like 5 minutes plus because we're afraid of stream watching, because that's literally happened. The players are always finding ways to cheat. So in this scenario, at the time it was unfolding, first off, we thought it was fixed by game 3. So, you know, people are like, you should have delayed the match. It's like, why would we do that when we thought it was fixed? We literally thought it was fixed. You can look at NiP's Twitter. They thought it was fixed too. Now, the other issue is like we had already delayed the game by an hour. But here's the thing. We can't just trust the players. You know, there are so many scenarios in the last year in which the players, the teams, everyone has cheated in this game in the online era that we can't, you know, if it's the ISP issue, because here's the other thing. NiP only had one ISP, so we couldn't do a check on another ISP. They only had one ISP in their office. Anonymous had four ISPs, you know? So most teams in the online era after a year of this should have more than one ISP. Like that's...
Apparently a lot of them do have like 2 or 3
yes,
for exactly
yes.
this contingency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go.
We have 2 even in Australia. You know, like it's, you know,
right.
It's pretty standard. 100 Thieves had multiple.
Oh,
you know,
of course.
But yeah.
I've never heard of a gaming facility or a team house that only has one. So this was shocking to me. Maybe they have a really good one. I don't know. It wasn't their fault in the end, so we can't really blame the ISP. But if you can't check, you know, for all we know, I wouldn't put it past players to DDoS, like a team to DDoS itself in order to like get a delay if it wasn't going like and you know, if it wasn't going the way they wanted this game to go, that is certainly a possibility. I don't trust the players and the teams, and neither do any admins at this point in time, because of all the bullshit they have pulled. The players and teams have broken the trust of the TOs. So we can't just delay matches because the players say they have bad ping when it appears, especially, we don't have proof that it's on the server. It appeared it was their ISP at first. And the whole wacky thing about this is that the fan reaction was so out of place, because at the end of the day, what happened was FaceIT could have just said, oh, it was the ISP, and walked away, and that match would have never been replayed, right? But what FaceIT did was then spend the next like 8 hours the next day going over the server logs, working with NiP. They identified that the issue was them, then publicly came out and said, we fucked up. Like, that's what you want from a tournament admin. You want them to go back to realize their mistakes and then make the appropriate fixes for the future. Whereas we could have just simply said, it was their ISP, and that would have been it. And there wouldn't have been a replay, but it also wouldn't have been fair. You know what I mean? So like I think what they did was actually a very good thing in terms of tournament integrity, and they're getting blasted for allegedly doing the opposite, right?
By the way, since obviously we don't have anyone from like an admin of a different organization, in fact, sadly, I'll even say this right now, I actually was trying to get someone who could have been like an authoritative figure from someone else, and they basically were told by ESL, don't speak about this topic, because as I pointed out to Richard on By the Numbers, mate, it was so conspicuous, the lack of industry comment on this exact issue. Like, this is the scenario where if this was something where like ESL, for example, had like, you know, some standard protocol, you would, like, the joke is it's like that old one of like, how do you know if someone's a vegetarian? Oh, don't worry, they'll tell you. It'd be like that. Like, if every other TO did things totally different to Flashpoint, you would have known, because they'd have never shut the fuck up tweeting about it, making posts, maybe go on podcasts. You couldn't get anyone to talk about it. So maybe I can ask Gomez in this particular case, because he's dealt with people. Like, have you ever heard of anything like this particular issue? And or what do you actually think if this had been like an ESL or a Blast tournament or something else? How, pure speculation or based on experience, how do you think they would deal with something like this? Because obviously in this scenario, like, yeah, FaceIT initially didn't know if there was a problem, then waited a day, and part of it said they waited a few days and then they rematched the game. So what do you think would have happened if it was a different TO going? Just your own opinion.
If you're the bigger team, you get better treatment. I'm confident that's how it works. It always has worked, and it always will work.
A rematch maybe with a different TO, you think?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as to your original question, like, you know, how can this happen? The part that I don't understand about the story that's been publicly told is they said they tried VPNs. Now, if some of them are trying VPNs, then the IPs are different. So I don't understand where FaceIT like comes in with was detecting they're all on the same IP, because obviously they weren't if they're on VPNs.
Exactly, but that's what we tried the VPNs, and we were told that it was fixed.
Okay. So obviously they used the VPNs.
Yes.
It fixed that problem, but because it's a VPN, it's obviously just turns their traffic to shit, I'm guessing, because it's a free VPN or quite a common VPN, I guess. And that's probably a side issue and not the actual issue originally, would be my guess. But
I have no idea. I have no idea, because like there's no way to verify. Like, well, maybe there is, but I'm unaware of the ways to verify what was going on in that third game. And like Richard alluded to earlier, I don't know how often this packet loss was happening. Right? Was it every round? Once in the game? I have no idea, right?
This is like a really key point that needs to be like hit really hard here, because again, fans are going to get lost on this. Like you alluded to it, but let me make it explicit. Pro players, for the history of Counter-Strike, cannot be trusted to just go anecdotally off their word of what is happening in an online ridiculous game. If you allow that, I'm not joking, even your favorite players, the most legendary players of all time, will pull their Ethernet cable out and quickly plug it in again so it does a spike. They will lie about, like, for example, here's a good one,
you could DDoS yourself.
What if the ping is perfect, but you claim to have really bad packet loss? Well, in that scenario, the ping looks great from the outside, but you can't know the experience. Like, basically, I've even known pro players back in the old days when online play meant nothing. They straight up said they would do this during the server finding process. If it was too bad for them, they would either like essentially lag their connection on purpose, like you open a bunch of torrents or something back in the day, or one of them straight up told me what I just said. He said I would just pull the RJ45 out quickly, plug it back in really quickly. It would for a second like make me go sort of like, like flush entity packet loss, and then I would be back on the server. I go, look, I can't play like this, I can't bloody move, and they would just get a better server. Now, if people aren't following why I'm bringing this example up, in this particular case where the team goes, it's all right, we can play on our server, they'd be doing that all the time for every match. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, a Swedish team would do that until they got from 12 to 10 ping. This is what they would do. This is what the game would become, by the way. Like, I've told Gomez this story before. In Quake World, the original Quake, where they still play it to this day, but it's all played by the best players are all in the Nordic region, right? So it's Finnish people playing Norwegians playing Swedes, right? And cause no joke, what they're battling over is like, am I playing on 15 ping, but you're on 11 ping? That's unfair. They go, dude, they have like 1 hour sessions where they're using these like fucking VPNs trying to get like, he's down 2 ping, but you're up 3. Like, it's a nightmare. And so like players, and then throw in this last detail, this is a qualifier for the World Championship. This is a team in NiP's case where they just signed like a massive player. They're hoping it's going to. So if you imagine that, like, well, we can just trust that players are telling you, we can't. I'm sorry, we can't. We really can't. I know it sucks because you want to trust them, but you can't.
I lose faith in humanity when fans trust Counter-Strike professional players after the last year. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? How is that a reasonable expectation from any TO?
Yeah. I mean, like, so to that point, I mean, that is a fucking tale as old as time anyway. Like, you know, lag switching, rate hacking. There's always a way to make it look like you're getting the shit end of the stick when in reality you either don't want to play or you're getting battered and you want to, like, look for the exit rematch, you know, or a player's under the weather or doesn't turn up and you have to use a stand. That's like you say, for people that came from the source scene, I think we're all just so like the online era, what's been happening this past year in the online era doesn't like phase us at all because like we saw it all
a million times.
Yeah, like
this qualifier. Yeah.
This was the bread and butter for Source for like pretty much the entirety of its existence. I mean, you have to remember, Valve didn't even do anything about the competitive integrity for that game. It was a guy called fucking Jedi who invented Z-Block, which was the consistency enforcer. Otherwise, you could just change textures in the game. You just go in, take the VTFs, and just be like, right, I'll make doors see-through then. You would just change your value. Doors are see-through now, and I can play like this. No chance of that triggering a VAC ban either, by the way. Like online Source was a fucking joke, and we had to rely on external parties to even just make it viable as a competitive aspect anyway. But the thing that blows my mind is this rule that Flashpoint have. That's what I want to talk about. I don't understand the rule because to me, the worst thing you do...
just to clarify, the rule you're talking about is the rule that if there's a problem, you play the game out and it's only after the fact you appeal. You don't basically say, like, we can't continue. You just say, can I change it after the fact, right?
For me, doing that in any sport, if something's not right, you get it sorted before you play. You know, for example, say floodlights. I'm trying to think of something that's like analogous to a server in real sports, which of course can't be done. But let's go with floodlights. You need light to play, right? So let's say the floodlights at a stadium aren't working. You don't play in the fucking dark and say, well, we'll see how it goes and if, you know, if the result's too silly, we'll replay it later. No, you fucking stop. You get the lights fixed. If you can't get the lights fixed, you replay it at a later date. That's what should have happened in Flashpoint. And frankly, that there's a rule that says, no, for the sake of a schedule or whatever it is, you have to play is ridiculous because you're always in danger when you play something of essentially validating it and creating a world where they go, yeah, we're actually going to abide by that result. There's another point I'll get onto after that, but I think it's a good juncture for Gomez to jump in and talk about it as a, you know, former player manager, all of that stuff. For me, if I was in charge of NiP in that moment, regardless of what Flashpoint were threatening me with, I simply would not have played until it was right.